Canon's Nifty 50 STM lens is easily one of the best lenses for the price. But they've recently released the RF version of the lens, which means you don't have to use the adapter anymore if you want to fit it to an RF mount. But which one is right for you? The version 1 or the RF version? If you already own the version 1, what? My light? There's something wrong with my light. It keeps going bright and dark, so I'm going to have to sort that out. So yeah, if my exposure keeps changing, just ignore it, because you know why. So if you already own the version 1 of this lens, and now you have the RF mount camera, we're going to find out if it's worth upgrading to the new version, or whether or not you can keep the original version and save yourself a little bit of money. And if you don't own either of them yet, which one is right for you? Now we're going to have a look at a bunch of different things that I've tested, so let's get straight into it. Now I want to start with price, because I think it's important when you're looking at these tests and comparisons that you should forgive some of the downsides, because it's so affordable and we don't want to take any of it for granted. When I first got the EF version of this lens, it cost about £80 or something like that. It was a crazy price, and it kind of set the benchmark for how much I thought lenses would cost. But I soon came to realise that unfortunately it got very expensive after that point. So it does actually make you realise how good this is for the price. And the RF version is roughly double the price, but still very affordable for what you actually get and the quality of this lens. So in the new version, you've got a slightly upgraded minimum focus distance, which means you can get a little bit closer to the subject and you can stay in focus. Not a massive difference, but there is a difference, as you can see. Now there is a slight difference in colour, and you can notice it more especially on the skin tones. If you look at the RF version, the skin tones are much more natural, whereas the EF version, they're a slightly more pinky reddy tone. So I actually prefer the colours of the RF version. It makes quite a big difference for me personally, because I tried to colour grade it and you can't really get close to that. So if you want those better colours straight out of the lens without doing anything in post, then definitely go for the RF version. Now on both of these lenses you might notice a slight bit of fringing. Now it's not bad at all. Again, for the price, it's really good actually. You can only notice it on some objects. With people it's fine, and I think it depends on what light is hitting the object as well, but you have to look really close to notice it. Not a big deal at all. I've seen way worse on more expensive lenses, so no problem on either of these really. The manual focus wheel felt a lot better on the RF version, and it worked better as well. On the old one, it doesn't feel very good. It's not very smooth at all. But also I found that when I got to my focus point, it sort of went past it, and then you have to go back again and then again to find it in the middle. Very strange. If you're not using manual focus, not a big deal, but something to bear in mind. It's definitely smoother and more accurate on the new version. So the autofocus tracking is pretty similar with both, to be honest. It's not amazing. As you can see, when I'm moving towards and away from this object, there's a little bit of hunting going on, and it takes a while to grab focus. So that you see when I'm moving, the focus point sort of stops and starts, if that makes sense. Whereas when you compare it to the 16 to 35mm lens that I've got, it's a smooth tracking on the focus. It's really nice. But again, there's a massive difference in price. Between these two, it's very similar. I'd say the RF version has the slight edge if you look closely. Now I used to use this lens all the time, and I've not used it for a while, so when it came to using the RF version, I noticed just how loud they were when they autofocus. But that's something you get used to. It's not a massive thing. Just be aware that it's there. If you're filming video and you need the audio, you might get a tiny bit of sound in there. But if you're not that bothered, doesn't matter. Neither of these lenses have image stabilization, so it's worth using the in-body stabilization within the camera when you're using this lens, especially if you're going handheld. If you've got a gimbal, doesn't matter. Very similar weight, similar-ish design. I quite like the design of the old one actually. It's got a slightly bigger lens element, whereas the new one is a bit smaller. So on the old version, you've got a switch on the side that goes from autofocus to manual focus. So whichever one you want to use, you just flip that switch. Whereas on the RF version, the switch is to control the focus type or this control ring. On the old one, the ring was purely for manual focus, whereas this, you can have it set to manual focus or your control ring. So I have mine set up to change my ISO, but you can have it set to whatever you want there. Shutter speed, aperture, whatever. But that means that you have to go into your camera settings to change it from autofocus to manual focus. So it'd be nice if they had another little button on there which you could do that with, but not a deal breaker. In this instance, I prefer the old lens because sometimes I found that I'd change my ISO if I'm not careful with that. But I could just set it to autofocus and then switch the control ring off, and then I'm not going to have that issue. But yeah, it would have been nice if they'd put two things on there. In terms of sharpness, these lenses are pretty much exactly the same. Didn't notice anything. You got to look super hard to notice any difference, and when it gets to that point, there's no point. It's just the same. Now it's worth noting that if you're facing the sun or backlighting your subject using these lenses, you'll lose a lot of contrast and saturation. Now if you compare the STMs to the LUSM lenses, night and day. They retain the colours and saturation really well, and this makes a huge difference when you're trying to colour match with different lenses or cameras, or when you're just colour grading as well. But obviously you've got to weigh up whether or not that's worth spending an extra couple of £1,000 compared to £100 or so. It's one of those things where once you notice it, you can't unsee it. But I think my advice would be, if you're getting paid to do this stuff and it's your profession, then it's worth going for the more expensive lenses because your workflow is going to improve and obviously your results are going to be better as well. Or if it's a hobby and you don't have the cash to splash, then there's nothing wrong with these lenses. They're absolutely fine. If you're not getting paid, it doesn't matter. Which one would I choose? To be honest, yeah, I'd go for the RF version. Obviously as well, it saves having to use this adapter all the time. Not a big deal because I just leave that on the old version anyway, doesn't matter. Slightly better, it just has the edge. If you've got the £100 extra, go for the RF. If not, you won't lose sleep over having this one, trust me. So let me know what you think. Which one would you go for? The RF version or the original version? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that's helped with your decision. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more gear reviews and tutorials. Have a great week and I will see you in the next one.